Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Now, I meant to do this video yesterday, but then, life got in the way. There was problems, I had to do things there, and my wife insisted that I do things, and so this never occurred. So I'm doing it now. First video of the day, we're going to address the big issue of Humza Yousaf and the multi-decision-making process that goes on in his head where he doesn't really understand what's going on. Because, of course, originally it was a 50% plus one vote, then it was the majority of seats, and then he settled on presenting the most seats, whether it was a majority of seats or not. And, of course, the conference turned that down. They went back to the majority of seats. Now, it's still pointless, of course, because the UK government aren't going to look anything like this. Go, no, not interested. It's not a referendum. There's no need for a referendum. There's no call for a referendum. You don't have the majority of voters. And that, of course, is his big problem. And so they've had to settle, after having the most seats rejected, he's had to settle with the majority of seats. But either way, that won't matter either, because the latest polls show them with even fewer seats than was expected yesterday. It's the middle of their conference and they're still trending down. And it's not surprising. He opened his speech with, by saying that there are no shortcuts to independence. And then immediately tries to show people that there's a shortcut to independence. The man is a buffoon. He doesn't understand the words that come out of his mouth. Anyway, we'll take a look at this article that goes over what he was saying, what the plans were. And what's going on. Here goes. You know when sometimes you look back on your life and you remember that time when, and it's so awfully self-embarrassing. You go, oh God, I remember that. Oh God, it was so cringe. Oh God, I can't believe I did that. And it could be something minor. It could be that the person who was involved with it probably even forgotten about it. But because it mattered to you at the time, it stuck with you. It was festered with you this whole time. Well, Humza Yousaf must be like that over everything. Because yet again, we saw yesterday a man ill at ease on the stage. A man who didn't really understand what he was talking about. A man who knew he'd lost the room. He was, if I may, he was Jodie Cundy during the dance-off. He's made a mistake at the beginning and he's lost the plot and he's just completely screwed up everything that went on. Because I think he knows that he hasn't got a chance of doing any of what he's saying. And, of course, it's a meaningless plan. It'll do nothing. But anyway, out of touch Humza Yousaf forced into humiliating U-turn over Skexit's strategy as the majority of seats is backed. Yeah, I mean, he knew that this majority of seats won't even then get him his referendum. He knows that. He knows that full well. And so that was his original plan. Then he wouldn't back his own plan. And then he went with let's go for the most seats. And he wouldn't back even that. He wouldn't endorse, again, his own plan. Thinking he's got to have something. And that's all this is. He has this speech and he's got to say something. But nobody knows why. Not even the people in that room know why, because they all know it's pointless. Anyway, the First Minister was forced to roll back on his plans to push for independence by winning the most seats at a general election, with it now being the majority of seats. Wait for my next video. You'll see why that is going to be hard as well. So there's a little heads up. Anyway, Humza Yousaf breathed a huge sigh of relief as his backup Skexit strategy was pushed through by delegates at the SNP conference. But his original plan, which was for his party to call for independence if they win the most Scottish seats, humiliatingly fell. Well, his whole life is humiliation, isn't it? He's fail after fail after fail. Instead, the Nationalists will go ahead with winning the majority of seats at the next general election, a higher bar than previously proposed by the First Minister. He, alongside Westminster leader Stephen Flynn, have a number of months promoting the most seats plan, but reluctantly backed a majority amendment through fear of defeat. They must be used to defeat by now, surely. Surely they can't be scared of defeat. They've faced it so many times. In the very varied debate, which took over 2 hours at the SNP conference, a number of different and wild proposals were mentioned. One of them was asking for SDI, weren't they? And this guy wants to be leader, I think. And they said, no, we just do it. Just go, boom, Declaration of Independence, go. What are they going to do? What do you think they're going to do? They'll just cut your money there and then. You get nothing. Anyway, a number of different wild proposals were mentioned, including some Nat supporters calling for the breaking up the UK without permission. UDI, Universal. I said SDI, didn't I? UDI, Universal Declaration of Independence. The actual debate was even described as flatulence in a trance by one disgruntled supporter. I believe there was maybe more than one disgruntled supporter. Perthshire MP Pete Wishart was very critical of the motion that passed, as his majority of votes idea was turned down by delegates. Yeah, I mean, he's saying, Pete Wishart is saying a majority of votes. And as I say, that possibly has merit if it's just a majority of votes looking for a referendum. But even then, it's still not technically a referendum, but a majority of votes has merit, and that's that. But Pete Wishart himself described the majority of seats plan as bonkers. And you know, it's got to be if Pete Wishart thinks that, because he's as mad as a bag of spanners, isn't he? Anyway, the de facto idea was originally put forward by former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, but was quickly scrapped when she resigned. He described it as laughable. Well, actually, she pulled it before she resigned because she knew that if she lost that, it would be a weapon in the hands of her enemies. Because it'd be like, oh, well, you had your de facto referendum, you lost, that's it. Don't need another one. So she knew that. But Mr Yousaf welcomed the proposal being pushed through. He said during the debate, let's not fall into the trap of setting ourselves a bar. No other party sets itself to win. But you haven't. You're setting a bar that even if you get over that bar, it won't give you what you want because it's a completely meaningless thing. It's not a legal referendum. And the UK government just go, no. If you're so delusional, you think because you hit this number of seats, they'll give you independence, then you need to be tested. You need to go into a psychiatric ward and have some serious assessment done. He says, if the Westminster parties want to test for popular support for the proposition of independence, let's do it via a referendum. If they give us the powers, I will hold a referendum tomorrow. But in an election, a majority of seats is a victory, plain and simple. Yes, but that is also something that isn't going to happen. Mr Wishart made a final plea to delegates to back his plans, as he claimed that there would be no credibility in the proposals, which will now be spearheaded by the party. He said, we need to design a process where we're able to demonstrate, not just to the UK, but to the world, that a majority of people in Scotland want Scotland to be an independent nation. Trouble is, the majority of Scots don't. And so it doesn't matter what you say in your talking shop, because it's just not going to happen. He said, the only way that's available to us is through a general election, a democratic event. Could you imagine for a moment going to the United Nations and coming up with our assertion of independence by saying that we're moving towards it? They'll ask us, how much of the vote did you get? And when we turn around and say, well, we didn't get quite that, but we got some more seats, it would be laughed out. It's all about legitimacy, and it's all about credibility, and it's all about realism. Well, first of all, you have no legitimacy because you're not allowed to hold the referendum. Secondly, you've got no credibility because you're the SNP. Just take a look around you. And thirdly, it's about realism. Well, the realism is something you can't face because the realism is the majority of Scots want the Union. And you can't get yourselves over that. It does not compute in your tiny little brains. He said, the only way we can make progress, assert our independence and move on is when we get the majority of Scottish people to agree with us, which they don't. Also, they look around and they see the mess that the SNP has made of Scotland, and it frightens them because it's so bad. And if that's with Westminster being there as a backstop, imagine how bad it will be when they aren't. A number of SNP delegates urged fellow supporters to completely strike down the entire motion and instead just push for breaking up the UK without permission. Graham McCormack, who's battling Mike Russell for SNP president, proposed this. He claims Scotland could be independent in 12 months, and if the party accepts this motion, he says we're kicking it down the road. He said if the Nationalists win the next general election, they should instruct MPs not to attend the House of Commons, instead create a provisional government in Edinburgh. That, my dear heart, is called treason. And that is why the Catalonians, their leadership, are currently in jail. So yeah, go ahead, do it. I would love you to do it. I would love to watch you all be arrested, tried for treason, and put in prison. Good luck. Great idea. What a moron. Anyway, there we go. That's where we are. That's where we are. He stood on that stage. He lost his original motion. He had to go back to the previous motion, which he didn't want and didn't back. He gets it through. He calls that a victory. And yet, strangely, doesn't understand that it is, like him, meaningless, pointless, and useless. I pity you, but I just wonder why so many people still vote for the SNP. It's unbelievable, isn't it? You can show them what they are, and they still vote for it. What's wrong with people? What is literally wrong with people? Anyway, I shall stop there and come up. Now, what is truly great is that they've adopted this motion. Now, this motion is something that the opposition parties have got to keep pushing. They've absolutely got to keep pushing it and saying, look, this is the SNP. They're saying if they win the majority, they win the majority of seats, they are going to call for independence. And when they don't win, not only not win the majority, don't even win the most seats, the opposition parties will sit there and go, there you go. You've had your pseudo referendum, and the people of Scotland have spoken, and they don't want the SNP. Therefore, they don't want independence. Please accept that result. It is a democratic result, the same democratic result that you would have accepted had you won. And will they accept it? Will they bugger? Anyway, I shall round off there. Thank you very much for watching this first video of the day. Hope it's been good. I hope you liked it. Please press the like if you have. And while your thumb's out there hitting that like button, shift it across and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. That always helps the channel, keeps us going, keeps us growing. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and watch out for the next video, because we're going to show why the SNP aren't going to be the next party of government, we hope. Here goes.